Talk Sport. Powered by fans.
Hello and welcome to a very special edition of Hello from the Other Side. Not technically our opponents we're going to talk to, but we've gone a little bit international. We are joined, it's a very special guest, I've got to say, by Raphael Honigstein. Is that correct, Rafa? Am I all right pronouncing it like that?
Absolutely fine.
He's a journalist with The Athletic, BT Sport, and absolutely the Totally Show podcast. All about football with James Richardson, I believe. So have a listen to that. He knows a thing or two. So, Rafa, thank you very much for joining us. So we're here to talk about Sheffield Wednesday's new appointment. Obviously, we've seen all in the news, and he's had his press conference released last week on Friday. It's Danny, and please forgive me. Röhl. Is this right? Is this because this among Sheffield Wednesday
Rapper's face tells me that that's not quite right.
Getting there.
Röhl. He's going to be called Danny the Man because I'm sure he's going to be great. So no apologies to Danny about your pronunciation of his surname. But so obviously. A bit of an unknown Sheffield Wednesday fans, Rafa. What your initial thoughts of the appointment of obviously to Sheffield Wednesday, given obviously our poor start to the season?
Yeah, it's a really interesting one. I don't know how aware you are, but Danny was already in the mix for the job in the summer. He was interviewed, and I think he left a big impression. And when the managerial change came now a few months later, they came back to him, and I think his determination and his ambition to coach in England made it for him a really attractive proposition. Now, of course, it is his first job as head coach, so that's a big step up, perhaps at a lower level compared to his recent assistant jobs, especially if you think about Bayern Munich. But even the German national team, Leipzig before that. So it's going to be an interesting, I think, adjustment and learning curve for him in a different language, in a different league. Very unforgiving, the amount of games you have at that level. And that's going to be, a very interesting development to see how well he can adjust and how well he'll do.
I mean, it was obviously the way that he has come into the club. Us Sheffield Wednesday fans, and I don't know how far this reaches to obviously European football, but we do have a what we like to call a bit of a crazy owner. He's not the most stable owner with his footballing way he goes about it with managers and obviously how he runs the club and things like that. Obviously, Danny, he's had a chat with him in the summer, like you said, about the previous appointment. Who he's worked with, obviously, not as a manager, as you say, like an assistant, with previous owners and technical football directors of football and things like that. Is he going to be able to cope with that? Do you know? I know it's a hard one for him for his first job.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a very different experience to working at places that are very stable. Bayern Munich have a reputation for being also a very tricky club, but at least you kind of know how things go. And in his case, really had nothing to do with him, but the fact that Hansi Flick, who was the head coach fell out with the sporting director Hasan Salihamidzic, and then with the Germany job coming up, it was seen as a good way to move on for all parties, really. It's going to be key for him, I think, learning how to manage not just the players but the people above him. Not something he's used to, not something he ever had to do. As you said, I think Sheffield Wednesday, things are slightly unusual. It's been described to me as a very tricky mission. And I think that perhaps reflects the appetite of risk on behalf of both parties. I think the fact that Sheffield decided to go for a head coach without any previous experience shows that perhaps not in the best position to recruit big names. At the same time, Danny knows probably about the risks of taking the job, but because it's his first step up, he was willing to take that, thinking that he can manage that and that the challenge and the opportunity outweighs the downsides and the risk. But it is going to be a tricky one. I don't know. You might have more of an idea. I don't know how much autonomy he will have when it comes to having his wishes in the transfer market being adhered to. We have to make do with other people putting their players in, or can he really influence things? All these things, I think, we'll have to figure out, because if there's one thing that history has taught, maybe not so much him, but me as an observer, is that a little bit when people get together for the first time and in maybe romantic circumstances or in a more straightforward business relationship, a lot of promises are being made, and whether they're being kept further down the line is often a different issue. And I hope for him that he'll be given every opportunity to succeed.
I think that's a really interesting one, isn't it? Because the circumstances that he's come into the club have given him a lot of good grace with the fan base, and I, for one, have been really excited about the appointment, because it's a real departure from where we've been previously with managerial appointments under the current chairman. I think this one is really good. It's really one that really excites me based on his reputation, but his reputation is one for relative novices towards him, as myself and Ash and people at the Sheffield Wednesday fan base are. We look at it, and he's got a pedigree of working at Leipzig. He's got a pedigree of working at Munich with the German national team. I just wanted to sort of pull at that a little bit. I'm wondering what sort of profile he had in Germany. Was he held in high regard before he came to England? Obviously, off the back of the German national team, sort of assistant managerial position there. Did that increase his stock a little bit, or does he remain a bit of an unknown quantity on home shores?
No, I think when he became assistant coach to Flick at the German national team, then a lot more attention was paid to him. At Bayern, Flick was the story. He came in, he took over from Niko Kovac, and then went on to win everything. And of course, people in the know realized and understood what an impact Danny had behind the scenes, but it's not something that really entered sort of public consciousness to a great extent. When he became assistant manager in Germany, I think he was a bit more open. There were a few more interviews being done, a few more profiles on him, and people learned that he was an interesting person in his own right. It's very curious and very interesting that in the Amazon documentary about the Germany failure, really, at the World Cup, he is hardly featured. I think he's only got about 10 seconds in the whole documentary. And I think initially he might have been a little bit upset about being sort of on the sidelines, but because Germany did so badly, and the documentary really exposed Hansi Flick as somebody who had a real problem connecting with his players, and quite a poor communicator. I think Danny came out with more credit almost, or at least he wasn't tainted with the same brush as others. So I think it worked very much in his favor that he was still in the shadows in that respect.
It's interesting.
Yeah,
sorry.
go on.
I was just going to say, it's interesting that you sort of say that, because one of the major sound bites, one of the questions was around his age, and in his first press conference, one of the local journalists in England sort of asked how he would feel about managing players that are either older than him, that we have, or of a similar age to him, and he went back and talked about his relationships and his ability to manage big players, and the names that he referenced were Manuel Neuer and Lewandowski. And you think, well, for a team like Sheffield Wednesday, when the biggest name that we've had is, with due respect, somebody who's probably played a little bit of international football in Scotland, we're talking about levels, aren't we? So it seems to me that he feels comfortable managing big names, which is really encouraging.
Yeah, I think he does, and I think he relates to players obviously on a different level. I think as an assistant coach, you have a different dynamic. You can probably afford to be friendlier and nice to everyone the whole time, as opposed to the head coach who has to take difficult decisions. So again, I think it's going to be change for him. But of course, if you can talk effectively and get your ideas across to the likes of Manuel Neuer and Lewandowski, who are well in their mid-30s, then why shouldn't you be able to do that with young players, or with players even of a similar age, who ultimately, I think, don't really care about the age of a coach, but whether he can help them perform well and help them win. And as an assistant coach, I think Danny has enough experience and enough success to be given the chance. But of course, now it's a sink or swim situation at a difficult club in difficult circumstances. And I come back to the earlier point. I think there's a reason why both parties went for sort of a risky option, because they don't necessarily have the pick of more secure, surefire wins. He wasn't able to go into a Premier League club just yet. And Wednesday weren't able to go for a proven winner who's already done it, who's been already promoted 3 or 4 times or what have you. So there's a kind of a match here, but we'll still have to see if that works out in reality.
Yeah, I mean, on his style of play, or how his philosophy and theories about football, will he have picked those up with the managers he's worked under, or do you think he's going to have his own set out strict way of how he wants his team to play? We saw the previous manager, he didn't really seem to have any, not an idea, but any sort of philosophy, or us as fans no identity to see how he wanted the players to play. So I'm just thinking, obviously, with Danny coming in, working under like the managers you've spoke about, would he be taking to advance that into his own sort of theory and way he wants, or is he going to take, no, I'm just going to do it my own way. It's a totally new way of thinking. It's my chance. I'm Danny. I'm going to impart what I think onto these players.
Well, I think every manager has its own ideas, has their own ideas. But of course, he would have been influenced by the Red Bull group of football when he was there with Hasenhüttl for a long time, and before that at Leipzig. He would be influenced also by a slightly evolved version of that game at Bayern, where they were also pressing very hard, but of course they also had a lot of possession, so needed to have solution in possession. That's something that he also tried to work with in the German national team. I don't think you want to become a head coach as desperately as he has been without having very strong ideas of your own. Otherwise, if you're just prepared to follow somebody else's ideas, you can have a very comfortable life as a number 2 and just continue with wherever Flick's next job is, or sign up with some other people from the same vicinity of coaches. But the fact that he was really so eager to coach himself, which suggests to me that he has very strong ideas of his own now, is too early to tell. I think how they're going to look. I think every coach has to initially at least compromise between their ideal, their vision, and the players that he has and what they can and cannot do. There's no point to play pressing football with players who are not used to it, who don't want to play it, who are too slow to play it. There's also no point playing possession football with players who are much happier playing direct football and are not comfortable playing out from the back. So all these things need to have to be kind of negotiated, if you will. And he has to do all that while winning. And that's sort of the art. You have to deliver results before all the pieces are in place. The more results you deliver, the more then you'll be trusted to put the pieces in place and have more success going forward. So that is that's the art of coaching, and it's not going to be straightforward. As I said, I think we shouldn't underestimate that it's his first job, but also in a new league. Even I think the difference between Championship and Premier League is going to be pretty stark. Starting with the amount of games and how they're being refereed and the kind of talent and kind of the opposition that you come up against. And he'll have to get used to all of that very quickly without any time for pre-season, without any winter break, unlike in Germany where you can sort of make some adjustments. So it's going to be an interesting ride, I think.
Do you think that he has the skill set and the ability to do that based on what you've seen of him working with teams previously? And it encourages me to the things I've heard and the things that you've said there around an understanding that we're not going to go and play a pressing game of football if we haven't got the personnel to do it, or if it means that we have to go long and direct. And we recorded the other night, and I actually said that I don't think necessarily that we'll see wholesale changes on Saturday in his first game. I think he will have had a look at how we've been setting up and where we've played well, and he'll have a look at the personnel that he's got, and I think he will tailor his approach to the team rather than saying we want to get this player playing in this style because that's how I believe it's going to be. Do you think he's going to be capable of sort of working with the players that he's got at the moment, or is he going to try and change their sort of style of approach?
I think it's very difficult to answer because I think he strikes me as a realistic and pragmatic coach in that respect. But he might come up with some left field ideas, put players in different positions, think outside the box, and stay true to his system and his philosophy. It's not a word I really like to use, but his style of play, shall we say, and even perhaps at the cost of having one or two players who are otherwise important, who might not be able to play that way. It's very hard to predict which way it's going to go. Where I think the more perhaps interesting and kind of crunch of the matter, the crux of the matter is can he be an effective sort of figurehead? I think in English football, because the manager speaks all the time and you don't really hear from anyone else at the club, it's all on him. It's all on him in the press conferences. Or every single day, every 3 or 4 days, another press conference. You have to lead. You have to be very charismatic, very forceful. As a former number 2, I think that's going to be very new to him, to be so exposed and to be at the coalface of everything. And that's where I have no way of knowing whether he's cut out for doing that. He, having met him, having talked to him, clearly has a burning desire to coach, burning desire to win, feels he can do all these things, but we're yet to see him do it. And that's where I think some of the challenges for him might lie. I think technically, tactically, in terms of the know-how, it's all there, but coaching isn't just that. It's also man management. It's also, as we said earlier, managing the people above you, and having sort of the force of personality to see through difficult moments and fight some fights that need to be won when it comes to recruitment, when it comes to how you should train, when it comes to his idea of play. Maybe some people in the club, maybe some people in the dressing room don't like it. All of these, I think, are issues that need to be resolved, and we just don't know yet which way it's going to go.
And it's quite interesting what you said about, obviously, that some players may need to be, I was going to say sidelined, but that's not the quite, but having to be put into different positions and probably not playing as much as they expect to, because there is a core number of Sheffield Wednesday players that have been at the club quite a while that have been very important to the club in the last few years. You like Barry Bannon, Liam Palmer, Stevie's favourite player, Liam Palmer. So I should have said that. That have been there a while, and he may have to just step aside and not play the roles that they've done. And it's quite interesting to hear you say that you believe he's not going to be scared of making them decisions as well.
I'm just speculating here, really, because I would assume, without having first-hand knowledge of what went down, but I would assume that he would have done some really thorough due diligence on the squad and decided who's going to play the way I want them to play. Do I have to change because of the squad? Do I have to adjust my ideas? Do I just compromise until the winter break and then hope to sign one or two key players that make a big difference to me? I would sort of be 99% certain that these would have been the sort of conversations that would have happened during the interview process, because as much as he wants to coach and as much as he would have jumped at the opportunity, I think he also interviewed the club at the same time. He wanted to make sure, I believe, that he could do what he wanted to do with his team, with his club. And I'm not necessarily talking about assurances, but I'm talking about really looking at the squad and thinking, can I do better than my predecessor? Is there quality that is untapped? Can I, by making a few changes, get more out of this team? And I'm sure he wouldn't have gone into this blindly thinking everything's going to be fine. He would have had some very deep thoughts on how to improve things. And that's just the way he is. That's the way he works. So that makes me pretty confident that he will have, one, perhaps even two plans of how things can improve quite quickly.
It was quite interesting to listen to him say that for his backroom team, he is going to bring in 4 German coaches to work aside him, but also an experienced Englishman or an experienced guy from the English leagues. And it's quite refreshing that he's obviously going to bring his team in, but also recognises that there is some learning for him and his backroom team to do, and having an experienced guy at the side of him in his team who's going to help him. And that's good for us fans to hear that, to be able to hear that. And I think, not speaking for everybody, but the initial first few days of being at the club already, he really has, like Stevie said earlier, put a bit of, a bit more, I don't know what to say, thought optimism. And a bit more optimism. Yeah, very much so. Yeah, optimism into obviously what has been a pretty poor start to the season. Is there any? I don't know. Is there any obviously former coaches he's worked with that you know of that would be up to that task to come with him, or he's worked with people before? Do you know of in Germany if there's any sort of talk around that, or will there just be left field, really out of nowhere sort of coaches?
No, it will be people he's worked with before that he or knows quite closely. I think no appointment has been made officially, right? Of the head.
I think there was an announcement. Is it Sasha Lenz?
Sasha Lenz, yeah. But he's not a coach. He's
it's performance analysis or performance analysis. Yeah.
Psychologist, really.
Yeah.
Psychologist. All right. That's good.
Yeah. I think there's some issues around the work permits, possibly because it takes a bit of time to bring people in from Germany. They need to clear the FA rules for effectively giving an exception, because when you come in as a German coach or even as an assistant coach, you don't get a work permit immediately. You will have to first then sort of get kind of an exemption from via the FA, who says, okay, you're so good that we will recommend that the Home Office will give you a work permit, and that can take a bit of time. So now I think there will be people that he knows, and I think it reflects two things. One, I think especially for a new coach, for a new head coach, he needs to have people around him that he fully trusts. He doesn't want to be all alone in a foreign country in a strange league without having people around him who knows he can absolutely rely on. And I think that's going to be reflected in his appointments. But as you said, the idea of bringing in somebody with local knowledge also suggests that he knows that there are some things that you need somebody else to help you with, whether it comes to speaking to the players. He would have never talked to players of this level. They have different needs. They might have different ideas of professionalism compared to Red Lewandowski.
I'm sure they're not.
I'm just guessing. So all these things, I think, show you, without knowing the names, that he is very careful and very considerate and understands sort of what he needs to make this a success. And that for me is a very good sign.
I'm curious, and forgive me, I don't know if you'll know the answer to this or not, but it'd be remiss of me if I didn't ask. We have in the championship, the playing squad is capped at 25. Now we've got 24 players registered at the moment, with one who we know who is going to be that 25th man, who's somebody who's been out on his ear basically for the majority of the season. He's come back into the training fold this week under Danny. It doesn't leave a lot of movement in terms of the squad, in terms of making any sort of sudden changes or overhauls to what we've got. He's dealing with what he's dealing with, obviously, because he can't bring any free agents and he can't make any signings for the next couple of months. Has he ever had any sort of dealings or coaching sort of reputation with working with younger players from the youth team? Because we can bring members of our under 21 squad into the sort of the squad on match days and so forth. Just wondering if he had any sort of reputation for working with younger players.
Not really, but I think that's less to do with him, but the clubs he worked with. Both Bayern and Leipzig don't tend to bring in through a lot of their own players from the youth team. Leipzig have a reputation for buying fantastic talent from France, from Hungary, from all over the place, Croatia, and then making them into top class players. And over the years since they've been to the Bundesliga, I think you can count the number of players that have come from the old through the youth setup, not even on one hand, because I think it's none, or perhaps one. And it's the same with Bayern. When he was there, Alphonso Davies came through, but Davies was not really a product of the youth team. He was bought from Canada, and then after sort of a few months with the second team, was promoted and was an immediate success. But that process had started under the previous manager. So I couldn't really tell you that he has a specific tendency or experience with young players, because the clubs, and of course the German national team, in many ways is the same. You don't tend to get a lot of young players in the national team either.
I think to be honest with you, I think that question, the question I've posed there, is probably more for our listeners and the people that are speculating than it is for you, because I think a lot of people will be coming in going, we've got a new manager, we need to be drawing on. We for example, we've got a striker who scored 10 goals for the youth team, and there's a major clamour at the moment to put him straight into the first team. And the fact that we've got a new manager that will have a look at him, it may dispel any sort of beliefs or expectations that he's suddenly going to start flooding our first team with players from the youth team if he doesn't have form for doing it. So again, I think that's probably a question that I've asked to sort of bring up the topic rather than getting the answer, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, but I wouldn't. I mean, we shouldn't really make any judgment on what happened before, because it wasn't down to him that these youth players didn't advance from Bayern and Leipzig. And even if they had, it'd be questionable just how much that was down to him either, because he was the assistant coach.
Yeah,
and that's
of course.
really his remit to to decide who's going to go up and down from the B team. So, but I think, and this is perhaps more relevant, I think he'd be open enough, and being a young manager himself, to look beyond experience and will judge people on merit. And if he feels that somebody is ready, he strikes me as the kind of guy that is not going to have very strict ideas of what you have to do before you can earn your right to play in the first team or whatever. So I think he's going to look at it in a very fair and fresh way, and that's the only thing I can really say with any degree of certainty.
Thank you very much for the insight, Rafa. I mean, we're gonna let you go because we've taken up enough of your time, and thank you very much. But just a final word from myself, and it's I'm so sure that you do want him to do the best, and obviously it's going to be hard for him. As an overview, the club are not very stable off the pitch, or on it at the minute. So hopefully he's going to bring some stability. Not the previous manager, but the one before, Darren Moore, he really did have an affinity with the fans. And I think for a kickoff, Danny, from his press releases and what he said, I think 99% of the fans are all behind him. It's an appointment that's, like I said, got us excited. It's really out of the blue. I don't think any Sheffield Wednesday fan would have really known who Danny was before this. Like you said, he did the interview in the summer, missed out, obviously. Obviously, in hindsight, he should have got the job. He should have had a summer and signed and 11 more matches at the start of the season, but he's not. And thank you very much for the insight, joining us and telling us a little bit about him, because, like I say, it was unknown to us. Really appreciate your time. Thank you very much for joining us.
Pleasure. I thought you were going to ask me one more question there.
Go on, Steve. You probably will.
I've got one. Yeah, just to sort of I thought it was going to go where I'm going to go now. The summary overall.
I didn't want to ask that.
Overall, I'm going to word it in a more diplomatic way. As Wednesdays, as a fan base, have we got more reason to be optimistic than we have to be worried, or do you think he's going to be a success? If you were a betting man, how do you think it's going to play out for him?
There's too many unknowns for me to put a bet on this. What I do know is that he's a good coach. I don't know how good he is as a head coach. Maybe he himself needs to find that out. But for me, the bigger issue is the club, really. Yeah. Because I think one or two things can happen. One is that you come to a club that doesn't have a lot of sporting competence. And as a new head coach...
Correct.
Yeah.
As a new head coach, you might want to have these people around you, people that you can rely on in the transfer window, people that you can rely on for a bit of advice, because they've been in charge in a position like that and have run clubs for 20 years in the Championship or above, and know everything about the things that are sort of not on the paper, that are not written down, but the things you need to know. And if you don't have that, you might struggle. You might struggle even though you're a great manager, but you might struggle because you just don't get enough backing, don't get enough input from the people above you. And I think that is the big danger at a club like this. There's also, though, a big chance, because if you emerge into this void, if you will, and get the right results, then suddenly you'll get a lot of power. And then you'll be in a position, unlike, let's say, in Germany, where clubs are much more structured in terms of many different layers of decision makers. You're in a situation that you might have more power than ever before, and you'll be able to make a lot more decisions that you would be otherwise at clubs that have a strong CEO, that have a strong sporting director, that have a strong technical director or squad planner or whatever the role is called. So it also offers tremendous opportunity, but it's a big risk at the same time. I don't know enough about Sheffield Wednesday and the squad, to be perfectly honest with you, to give you a strong prediction of what I think will happen. I just think that he's going to try his best. I think tactically he's very good. I think he's a very good coach when it comes to reading games, understanding what needs to be done on the training pitch. But whether that all translates into a stable environment conducive to success, you'll know more than me.
And I know the answer to that.
I think, to bring it full circle, I think we started the conversation talking about how excited the majority of the fan base were. I'm excited because I see what young, dynamic, progressive, albeit pragmatic coaches have done in the Championship over the last couple of years, and I would rather that. And you're absolutely right. We're such an unknown quantity at this level for various reasons. The fact that we've got somebody like him coming in gives me more reason to be optimistic, and I'm excited about how he's going to attempt to get this football team playing. And it's for me, I believe I speak for many of us. I think it's one of the best appointments that we've made, certainly under this chairman. But as a coach, as somebody who's a figurehead for managing the team, I think he's the most exciting prospect we've had in a almost a generation. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Okay, well, best of luck.
Thank you very much.
We're gonna need it. Thank you very much. Like I said, we're bottom of the league, and I just want us just to not get relegated and let him have a full summer, full transfer, and we'll get there. That's what we will. Once again, thank you very much for joining us. Thanks for listening, everyone. This has been Hello from the Other Side International Special, talking all about Danny. I'm gonna rule. Sorry. Rule. Thank you, Rafa. Thank you very much for joining us. He's got it. Oh no. That's it now. We'll click that one. Thank you very much, everyone, for listening. We'll speak to you real soon, and it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.